to have with us Melissa Lacombe, who is the Director of Operations at Roanoke College. She has lots of good stuff to share with you.
And she'll pass it along. A little bit more about myself and then we'll get started. First off, they are taping me, so that's why I have extra. That way we can share this with everybody that cannot make it this evening. So as she said, I'm Melissa Lacombe. I'm the Director of Operations for Admissions and Financial Aid at the college. I actually am a 2000 grad and I've been there ever since. So this is my 25th year. And each year, this was actually my very first assignment that the director gave me, is to present at Roanoke County. So they've asked me back ever since. So hopefully I'm doing a good job. Either that or they couldn't find anybody else to volunteer. So I am here to present about financial aid. Yes, I work at Roanoke College, and that's where a lot of the examples that I will give you are from. But I've tried to give you the presentation generic enough. I'm not naive. I know many of you are not looking at Roanoke. So I'm trying to give you an idea about financial aid, public and private. Obviously, my experience is with a private liberal arts school. So again, some of the examples I give you probably will lean more heavily towards that. But please feel free as we go throughout, if you've got questions, even if they're not specific to Roanoke, please feel free to ask those. And then one other note before I start, you've now got a contact in the financial aid office. I offer every year. Yes, again, I work at Roanoke, and that's where my first priority will need to be. But if any of you need any assistance along the way, financial aid-wise, you've got questions about what you see on the website at different schools, you need help filling out the FAFSA, you need help interpreting financial aid packages, use me. Okay, contact me. We can set up some time. We can talk over the phone. I offer that every year, and every year 2 or 3 people that are not interested in Roanoke take me up on that. So you'll see in the copy of the PowerPoint that you have, the very last slide is my contact information. So again, I encourage you to please reach out if you have any additional questions. I am a Roanoke County grad. We moved here my senior year in high school from Vermont. So I did not go to William Byrd, although I live just around the corner. I went to Cave Spring. Sorry. Would have preferred Byrd, but anyway, we went through the process. I went to Roanoke College. It's an expensive school. We went through the financial aid process and kind of asked the same questions that you're asking yourselves now. So hopefully the presentation, you're not going to leave here experts in financial aid, and that's not the intent. What I hope you leave here today is a few more of your questions answered and a contact. If nothing else, you've met me, so feel free to contact me. We do have a lot that I'm going to try to cover. We have probably about an hour. Obviously, I know you all are busy. It's a busy time of year. So I'm going to try to get through in an hour. There may be a few slides that I go over pretty quickly. But again, I will be here for questions afterwards, and then you have my contact information as well. Up on the slide, you can see the agenda, so to speak, what we're going to talk about. I've got a few slides to kind of give you a reality check. It's been 25 years since I went through school. Costs are very different. So for parents sitting in the audience, I just want you all to understand what you're facing. But I also have some information in there, not to panic, but just to give you a real sense. We want to be honest and you want to be prepared. So I've got a few slides there. We're going to talk about applying for aid, different types of aid, and then I have a few slides in there about some additional notes that we wanted to highlight that really didn't fit anywhere else in the presentation. Okay? So a reality check. As I noted, it's been 25 years since I left college. I think at the time tuition at Roanoke was about $14,000. Now it's $35,000. And that type of an increase is not unique to Roanoke. Certainly we are more expensive than a public school or community college, but everybody's college costs are increasing. It just is the way it is. The economy is different. Just utility costs to house students are different, to feed students. So what I encourage you to do, there's a website up on the slide. It's a little hard to see. Hopefully you can see it in the presentation that you have. But really there are numerous slides, numerous websites out there that will give you an idea of the cost of attendance at the individual schools. You can go out to each individual's website, or you can utilize what are called net price calculators. Every school is required to have a net price calculator. And every year it's required to be updated in October. So each and every school, you can fill that calculator out. You're answering very simple questions. It'll give you an idea of the cost associated with the student's attendance there. So research and make sure that you are informed. Again, a reality check to know what you're facing, but it's not something you need to panic. Financial aid is prevalent whether you go to Roanoke, Virginia Tech, or even Virginia Western. So we're not expecting you to foot 100% of the bill. Yes, you're going to have some cost, but aid is there. So what I want to reiterate and really stress, do not cross a school off your list simply because of the sticker price. Most of the students you can see up there percentage-wise, most of the students that go to Roanoke College, 98% of them have some sort of financial aid. But if they just simply looked at that sticker price, tuition, room and board and fees, and saw $56,000 and marked us off the list, they're never going to know. And a lot of times, once that financial aid comes through, it's very comparable to another school, whether it's in the state or especially it's comparable to out-of-state costs. So do not cross schools off simply because of that sticker price. There is aid available, and the presentation will go into some examples of what you may want to take advantage of. First, I want to talk about applying for aid. We're going to highlight, this slide highlights institutional aid. So for many schools, there is a separate application beyond your application for admission. So you'll fill out your application through admission with the admissions office. Once you're accepted, typically they will notify the financial aid office at whatever school you're applying to. Some schools require a separate application. Roanoke does not. So what that means at Roanoke is as soon as you're accepted, admissions notifies us, and then we generate a scholarship, a merit-based scholarship, simply based upon that application. It is very important that you know whether or not the schools that you're looking at require that additional application, okay? If you don't know that and you miss a deadline, you're out of luck. So utilize the websites, contact the individual schools. It will vary from school to school, and it is your responsibility to kind of look and get familiar with what's required. Otherwise, you may miss out on something. Those institutional applications are usually utilized for merit-based funds. And when I say merit-based, those are funds based upon your high school performance. So a lot of schools will look at your GPA. Many will look at weighted GPA versus just your standard high school GPA. Some will look at core GPA. It really depends upon what the individual school wants to do, but they'll look at GPA. Some schools will also encourage you to submit standardized test scores, so your ACT or your SAT. Those are all as a result of this institutional aid application if it's required. There are lots of other opportunities that some schools may offer. Roanoke, for instance, has fine arts scholarships. We offer scholarships for students that submit a portfolio for art, theater. We have music and choral. We now have a new marching band. All of those may have scholarship opportunities, but they may also require a separate application. There's honors programs, there's scholars programs. Each school has a variety. Again, it's important that you look at the website, contact the admissions office, contact financial aid, find out if those applications are required, and find out what the deadlines are. Okay? A lot of those deadlines are very strict, especially in the public school system. So if you're going to Virginia Tech, you're going to Radford, JMU, what have you, make sure that you stick by those deadlines. So utilize the websites, get that information, and then you should be okay. The one that many of you heard about is the application for federal aid. How many have heard about the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA? Yeah. Okay. So I will, before I delve in, there is no way that the FAFSA this last year was terrible. Bottom of the barrel, there were so many errors with it. There is no way it could get worse, knock on wood. Now, I will tell you, it was a challenge. You all are lucky enough, you're going through, I don't know how many of you are here for seniors, juniors, sophomores. You're going through after a very tumultuous year. There were lots of errors. The positive thing is the Department of Education has acknowledged that, and they are working very hard to get that corrected. But it's also helpful now that there's a year behind the financial aid administrators. I had no idea what to expect when I presented to this group last year. I knew it was probably going to be difficult. I had no idea that it was as bad as it was going to be. But even so far this year, we are seeing improvements. We saw improvements as the year went on. So do not, I caution you, don't rely on what you heard your friends or coworkers talk about last year. It should not be that difficult. It should not be that many errors, but just be aware that it is still a new application, okay? It is typically in the past been available October 1st. This year, because they wanted a smoother rollout, they are piloting it until about December 1st. So what that means is for most everybody here, it will not become widely available until December, the first part of December, maybe sooner. So for this year, you need to mark your calendar for December. Subsequent years, we're hoping that they'll go back to that October deadline. But it's important for you to know it was slightly delayed. And that, again, is just them acknowledging that they didn't do a great job last year. They had lots of issues when they rolled it out initially, and a lot of students were paying the price in terms of major delays. Financial aid offices were dealing with major delays. So hopefully their kind of little piloted rollout will help make that a little bit smoother, so that come December, things should go pretty smoothly. Okay, the deadline for that application, again, varies from school to school. You'll see some deadlines February, some deadlines March, some March 15th. It is important, again, similar to the institutional application, that you look and see what each individual school requires. Okay? I've given you a website. Again, it's a little small up on the screen, but you've got it on the PowerPoint. The State Council Higher Ed of Virginia has a website where they will post, if they're made aware, they'll post the individual deadlines. So that's a great resource if you've got lots of different schools and you don't want to contact each of them. Check that website out. They should have majority of the schools listed there. And of course, again, you can check the websites, you can call the schools. More times than not, you're getting some communication from the schools that have that deadline listed there. But similar to the institutional application, if you miss the deadline, you may be out of luck. Okay? That's not the case at Roanoke. We'll still process. We have students that are here. We're at fall break right now, so they've been in class just about a month and a half. We still have students that have not done the FAFSA for this year. Now, it's late, but we will still work with them. That's not going to be the case at every school. Some schools like Virginia Western, they've got so many students that they're dealing with that they do try to stick to their specific deadlines. So make sure that you are recognizing what those are and that you're following through and getting that in there. Okay? To access the FAFSA, the website is listed up there. It's just studentaid.gov. You'll go in there. The website looks, I will caution you, the Department of Education is famous for changing the looks of their website, the pictures. They like to mix that up. I'm convinced it's just to confuse us all. But really the gist of it, the ribbon that's up at the top, doesn't change dramatically from year to year. But you may go in there and the picture might not be this blue background, it might be something different. Don't get hung up on that. You can see there are usually user-friendly links. On this particular screen there are two where the blue arrows are pointing you towards. You're just looking for the FAFSA application. What you can do is click there. It is a free site. Department of Education has put a lot of funding in this particular site, especially over the past year, because it was a major overhaul this last year. Okay? It's secure. It's probably more secure than it used to be when we physically mail these in. So please do consider doing it online. You do have the opportunity to do it on paper, but that is a major delay. This year it was like a 3-4 month delay. So try to use it online. You are entering some pretty sensitive information. The Department of Education knows that. So there's lots of protections behind the scenes that you're not seeing that will protect your identity and your information. So it shouldn't be a concern. Again, the website's up there. Usually once you submit, the results are typically available within 72 hours. That was not the case last year. Somebody who submitted when it became available at the very last minute on December 31st. And some students were not able to submit for weeks or get their results for weeks. Hopefully that's not the case. It goes back to that quick time frame, but just know there is going to be a little bit, it's not an immediate, because behind the scenes it's going to central processing in Illinois, but it should hopefully be a little bit faster, much faster than this past year. The very first step though to filling out that FAFSA form is to obtain what's called an FSA username and a password. You all can do this now. Yeah, the FAFSA is not available till December, but this is a step that you can take care of this evening when you get home if you want, or this weekend. Every parent, well, at least one parent and a student need to obtain an FSA username and password. They're going to be separate. I personally would encourage every parent, just in case something happens. That way you're not scrounging at the last minute junior year for mom to get one because dad had one the freshman year and dad's working and we need to submit the FAFSA. So I would encourage everybody to do it. Whether you use it or not, that's totally fine. Once you get that username and password and to apply for it, you simply go to the website. There is a link, usually it's in the upper right-hand corner, that says, create a new account. Once you click there, you will give them name, address, email, social security information. I think that might be it. Yes, ma'am.
Is it separate for the student and separate username for the parent?
Yes. Student, if you have a family of 3, mom, dad, and student, everybody really should get their own. It has to be separate. Parents cannot share. It has to be separate. Okay.
So it's pretty self-explanatory when you go in.
Oh yeah, this is probably the easiest part of the FAFSA, honestly. But I will tell you, it is extremely important that you know exactly how you enter this in. And you're going to see in a few minutes when I go over some pitfalls. It's important for you to share some of this information as a parent. If you're entering it in, you want to make sure your student knows the information that you've put in there. And you're going to see why in a few minutes. That is the biggest issue that we had this year. So I want to stress that as a parent requests it, maybe write down, don't write your social security number down because that's sensitive, but write down exactly how you type in your address, exactly how you type in your email and your phone number, okay? It is very important for the parents to do that. Not so much the student, but it's more for the parents to communicate that to the student, okay? When you go out there, again, it's very self-explanatory, very easy. You will set up challenge questions. You can also authenticate to either your email or your text. Again, lots of security. It's a little inconvenient when you're trying to access it quickly, but there are multi-factor authentication set up, so you will need to get all of that set up. When you set your challenge questions up, know that the answers are going to be case sensitive. So if you're putting your birth town and it's Roanoke, and you capitalize Roanoke, if you need to utilize those later on, you need to remember that you capitalize Roanoke, because if you put lowercase Roanoke, it's not going to match. Okay? Another reason why you might want to write those down. These FSA usernames and passwords are going to be good for a lifetime, meaning that you will utilize them for subsequent years. The student will use it for freshman, sophomore, junior year into grad school. The parents will use it at that same time, and the parents will use it for subsequent students that go through the process. If you are one where the student that we're here kind of today representing is one of your younger and you've already been through the process, the FSA username that you used for your other child will be good for this one, okay? So it's good for a lifetime. Keep that information handy. I would encourage you to write it down exactly how you type it in so that you have that to reference back in the future, okay? Once you get that, the Department of Education will have about 24 to 48 hours. They're gonna actually confirm your identity, and then you will get an email that says it's been confirmed and you can go ahead and proceed. Again, you can do that step now, and then December 1st, when it becomes available, you're going to want to access the website. Okay? This is actually, if in that previous screen, if you clicked on either of those blue buttons, this is what it looks like right now. Again, the look may change slightly, but it's very user-friendly. You can't see it up here. Hopefully you can see it on your slides. There is start a new form and edit existing form. It's kind of counter to what we all think working with the government is. This is fairly user-friendly. Yeah, they had some challenges this past year, but it really tries to guide you through. Simple click on that blue button, that'll get you into the application for the upcoming year. I will tell you, this is a slide that I took for the current year that we're in because I was trying to get the presentation before they switched it. It will obviously say 25-26, and then there'll be a smaller little link. So just make sure that you are filling out the correct one. You all, if you are looking at next year's enrollment, fall of 2025, you will want to do the one for 25-26. It's anybody starting in August and September. It's the 25-26 that you want to complete. Okay? Once you click in there, you'll click on that Start a New Form. And the very first thing that's going to come up is information about who's starting the application. Either a student or a parent can start the application. For purposes of filling this out, as we've worked through the process, frankly, I think it's easier if the student starts it. It's up to you, but I found it as I'm counseling families over the past year, it is easier if the student starts it. It's okay if the parent does. Sometimes the parent kind of gets mixed up and starts answering questions as if it's for them, but it really should be their student. You don't have that mix-up when a student starts it. So I would encourage that the student start the form. Regardless, you just click the radial button, and then you can go ahead and click that continue button. And then at that point, you're going to be brought into the FAFSA. Okay, we don't have the time for me to go through every single slide or every single screen, but I have given you an example of some of the information that you will supply. Obviously, there's going to be demographic information, so the student's going to have to answer birth date, address. They're going to answer some questions about what year in college they are, their high school. They'll have to list their high school. They will have to list what their graduation status will be. Most of it will be high school diploma. And there'll be some additional information in there that they have to supply about parents. Okay? So they might need parents' names. They might just need one. It depends upon your individual circumstances, but they'll just need parents' names at this point in the process. So it'll ask a little bit about that, and then there will be some financial questions that it will ask either the student or the parent, depending upon where you're through the process. And those financial questions, I've listed some of them up there. Not too intrusive. A lot of the information we'll get directly from the IRS, but it is important to know that they'll have to enter that information. Obviously, a student more than likely doesn't have child support received. That would be a question that the parent would also be asked. But the biggest thing under that financial information, the biggest change from last year, I would say, is this idea of consent. So in the past, families used to have to take their tax returns and actually look and get exactly your adjusted gross income from this line on your taxes and transfer it onto the FAFSA. They have grown from that process. They no longer require you to necessarily do that. They do have a link that they've worked directly with the IRS where they can pull your information in, both the student and the parent information directly in. That way there's no question of you entering information incorrectly. It's going to be automatically drawn from your tax return. And for the next year, it's actually going to be 2022 tax information. Okay? Now, the Department of Education cannot go out to the IRS on your behalf and draw that in without your consent. Your consent, and both a student and a parent must provide consent. And it's simply a little radial button or a checkbox, but that is extremely important because if a parent and or a student fails to give consent, even if you are not required to file taxes, which most students are not, most students nowadays don't tend to work, they must provide consent. If you do not provide consent, student is not eligible for any federal aid. So Roanoke will contact you and say, hey, you didn't provide consent. If you don't provide consent, you're not going to get anything. So it's very important that both the student and the parent provide that. And all that's doing is giving the Department of Education the approval to go out to the IRS and gather your information. Okay? That's not an option. You have to do it if it's available. Now, there are going to be some circumstances where, for whatever reason, a good example might be when you were married, possibly in 2022, you're now divorced, separated, that link is not going to work. Or, you know, if anything else like that changed, perhaps you moved in 2022, you lived, in my instance, maybe Vermont, I moved to Virginia, that link may not occur. In that instance, when you submit the financial information and you click next after that consent, it's either going to just move along in the process with the next questions, or it will ask you the tax information. If you get the questions about tax information, don't worry. The majority of you will not get this, but there are going to be some of you that will get those tax information questions. In that instance, you will have to take your tax return and transfer the numbers. It doesn't mean you did anything incorrectly. It's just for whatever reason, that link to the IRS just didn't work. There was some change that everything has to match in terms of your demographic information for that update to happen. And if for whatever reason it is not able to do that, you may need to manually enter that information. Again, I would say probably about 80% of the parents that came through our office, this IRS link worked, but there were a few that it did not. And again, it makes it a little bit more cumbersome, but you should just be able to take your tax return and transfer those numbers. It tells you exactly what line you need to take. But if you have any questions when you're doing that, something looks awry, feel free to reach out either to me or to the individual financial aid office and they can assist you. Okay? There are some additional demographic information like gender and race and ethnicity. Those are really, I think, for statistical purposes. The Department of Education may alter the way they ask a question. They may offer, perhaps if they've got a lot of Hispanics possibly filing the form, they may offer some help that is Spanish related that they might not offer now. So those are really just to help them kind of guide to see who's filling out the FAFSA and perhaps guide as to future changes. Those are all optional, those types of questions. You have the ability to list up to 20 colleges online. I would say, I would caution you against having 20 colleges. That's a lot. But I know a lot of people early on in the process do start with a lot. If you are more than 20, you're going to have to play a juggling act. You're going to have to go make corrections in, take one school off, and add it on. I would say at this part in the cycle, having 20 colleges, we're in September, October. We're not in September anymore, we're October already. It's not unusual to have a lot, but you need to start narrowing those down. I would say probably by January, 5 to 10 would probably be the most that I would encourage. But you have the ability to do up to 20. Again, the slide is a little hard to see up there, but along with that consent, everybody needs to sign the form. You'll read the information, and then it's simply a checkbox, and that is you electronically signing it. Similar to consent, if a student and or a parent do not sign it and they are required to, the application will not process. Now, some schools like Roanoke will contact you. Big schools that have 20, 30,000 students will not. So it is up to you to know that you're completing this correctly. So make sure that if you don't recall signing it, chances are you probably did, because it really is a little click mark, but you'll want to go back in and make sure. You can also contact the individual schools and ask, and they can pull it up. Okay. Once that student, assuming the student started it, once they fill out their section, they will be asked to complete and submit what are called contributors, parent contributors. This is where they must enter exactly what you put when you as a parent signed up for your FSA username and password. Okay. I have had students that get so frustrated this past year, hours and hours they've spent, they cannot get it to process, and it's all because on one student, they put that they lived on Muse Drive, and their parents said, nope, I live on Muse Street. Didn't match, and that was an error. It seems kind of stupid that it's that detailed, but everything needs to match. The number needs to match, the street name, the street type, the email address, the phone number, everything needs to be identical. Obviously, the spelling of the parent's name. I had one where the student accidentally entered an extra L in the first name of the parent. Didn't match. And the bad part, unless they've changed it, the bad part last year is you had no clue that it wasn't working. It just appeared, it takes it, you move forward, and then the student got super frustrated, the parent got frustrated. They'd come to me, and I'd spend several hours trying to figure out what those discrepancies are. So that's the reason why when you fill out your FSA username and password, write it down, have that document available so that when your student goes in to submit the parent contributor information, they enter it correctly. So what they're doing is they're going out to the FAFSA, they're entering the parent that they are going to invite to contribute to their FAFSA. Once they submit that, again, hopefully they're entering it correctly, they will get kind of this "you're almost there" screen. And at the same time, the parent's going to be getting an email address. Just because the student gets this doesn't mean that everything is accurate. The parent is going to get an email based upon this. If the parent does not get an email, number one indicator that it didn't work. You must always, the parent contributor that they put there will always get an email. If everything is good, if they do not get the email, that is a good indication that they entered something incorrectly. So it's usually pretty automatic. There were several that I helped in my office, and within just a matter of a few seconds, by the time I logged out of the student's FAFSA and logged into the parents, the email was there. So it's very quick. So if you do not get that email as a parent, that's a good indicator. Before I move on, I do want to note, it's up here on the slide, who's considered a parent, who should contribute to the form. It's not as easy as it used to be. We're dealing with a lot more divorce situations, a lot more single family, grandparents raising grandchildren. Just because a grandparent is raising a grandchild does not mean they are considered a parent. So utilize the help function. Good rule of thumb, let's say you have mom and dad, they're divorced, I live with mom. It is mom's information that I'm going to put on this FAFSA. My biological father, they're divorced, he is nowhere on this form, okay? Now, if my mom is remarried, I am required to enter my stepdad's information. Even though he may not have any financial obligation to put me through school, he's a contributor, so he needs to be entered. So again, I've got biological parents are divorced, I live with mom, she's remarried, it's stepdad. On the FAFSA, it's mom and stepdad that I enter in there. And I know that's a bone of contention for a lot of folks because the step-parent doesn't typically have any financial obligation, but they are contributing to the household and their information is going to need to be submitted. Department of Ed has a lot of great help functions out there to help you figure out who's considered a parent. Obviously, if biological parents are married and they've always been married, that's super easy. But especially if you are in one of those situations where it's a grandparent raising a grandchild, unless they legally adopted them, they're not considered a parent on this form. So if you're in one of those unique circumstances, utilize the help functions that are out there. They're really good. Or if you've got a specific question, you can address that with the individual office, or you can contact me and I can kind of help guide you through that, okay? So once the student submits that, again, the parent will get an email that will look somewhat like this. The look might change slightly, but again, the key is not necessarily what's contained in the email, it's the fact that you got the email. There is a link in there, but if you do not get that email, that is number one, you need to go back. The student needs to go back and check and see what they submitted. Unfortunately, when they submit, it does go into a processing stage, so you can't go immediately back in. You're gonna have to wait a few days, but again, that email is key. If you get the email, and the parent would then log into the FAFSA with their username and password, and a screen will pop up like this, and down a little ways, that blue box, that light blue box will pop up. That blue box will pop up when that email is received. So again, if you, for whatever reason, I don't remember seeing an email, emails from the Department of Education tend to go to spam, so make sure to look there first. But if you don't recall seeing an email as a parent, you can always log in, and if you do not see this light blue box, that's another indication that that contributor information may likely be incorrect, okay? If you go in there and see the blue box, you're good to go. All you'll do is click on that dark blue, I think it says get started with the blue arrow, and then you will be entered in similar questions. Obviously, you're not going to be asking or asked where the student goes to high school. Those are student questions. You'll be asked some additional information that the student isn't asked just based upon, you'll be asked your household size, the number in college, not earth-shattering questions, but you'll also have to provide that consent as a parent. You're going to have to also submit your signature. As long as you do that, then you should be good to go. But the biggest thing, again, if for whatever reason that IRS check is not allowed to be performed for whatever reason, you may need to manually enter the information in there. But for most of you, it should automatically come in. Now, when it automatically comes in, I should have told this before, you're never going to be able to see the tax information, and that's on purpose. So when the student provides consent, they're either going to go to the manual, you need to give us the information, or they're just going to skip on to, I think the next section is what schools you want to receive the results. You are never, as a parent, going to see your tax information, and that's a security thing. That's one of the deals that the IRS made with the Department of Education is they'll allow you to do it, but you cannot see what they pull in. And that's the case. The student can't see the parent can't see the student. So do know that that is usual, and that is specifically for security purposes, okay? Once that is submitted, the parent will get something very similar. It says, congratulations, everything's good. You have to wait, I don't know specifically what it says, 48 to 72 hours, and then it will process. Once you get this congratulations, the student got a congratulations, you're good to go. Now it's just a matter of sitting and waiting for the Department of Education to process the form. Behind the scenes, there's a lot going on that you all don't see. I already mentioned that consent giving you the IRS data retrieval opportunity. As I noted, it is going to be pulling, actually I said 2022, but it's going to be pulling for next year 2023 tax information. So that's what we call prior year. The reason they pull 2023 rather than the ones that we're getting ready to file in April, everybody should already have filled out their 2023 tax return. So it's a way for them to get something that's already completed, and it's a way for them to treat every single student the same way. Now there's some instances where you can let the school know if there's some unusual circumstances that happened in 2023. Maybe you were employed and now you're not. Maybe you had a lot of overtime in 2023, now you don't. You'll let the school know that, but for purposes of the FAFSA, they're going to pull in 2023 information on everybody. So behind the scenes, they're retrieving from the IRS the information that I've listed up there, the adjusted gross income, the taxes paid. Those are all things that they need to put into the calculation. You all don't need to individually submit that because you've provided consent, and for the majority of you, that will come in automatically. So that's happening behind the scenes, and again, they're never going to display that information to you for security purposes. The school will receive them, but even the school, if you were to call me and say, hey Melissa, can you give me a copy of that FAFSA? I'm not allowed to do that. I can't even confirm for you the dollar figure. And that's all just to protect your identity and your tax information, which is sensitive information, okay? After it's submitted, all of that data goes to what's called central processing, which is located in Mount Vernon, Illinois. If you were to physically mail your FAFSA form, again, not encouraged, it would also go there. They put all of that information into a calculation that's called federal methodology. I'm not going to go into too much detail about what that is. If you are interested, you can Google it and it'll give you lots of calculations. It is a pretty intensive calculation that takes into account assets, income. They give you protection allowances based upon where you live, how old the older parent is, and how close they are to retirement. I tell you that just to let you know that it's not a random process. It is approved by Congress, very lengthy. We, as part of our training 25 years ago, I had to actually manually calculate. It's not fun. It's very intensive, but it is an equitable process. So hopefully, for your individual circumstances, you won't ever need to go out there or really kind of know the ins and outs, but know that it's put in place to treat everybody equitably. They're going to look at income for both the parent and the student on every single student. They're going to look at the assets for the parent and the student. Now, some of those allowances that I mentioned, the closer the parent is to retirement age, the less that they expect you to utilize your assets that you've saved to pay for college. So there's things like that. Usually it's about 12% per year that the Department of Education requires parents to contribute as from their assets, where it's like 32% from students. So they certainly expect students to foot some of the bill as well. Okay? Again, it's out there if you're interested. I think all you really need to know is it's not a random process and there is a formula and methods behind the madness. Okay? Once that FAFSA is processed, the Department of Education will return to the student what's called a FAFSA submission summary. They will get an email at whatever email address was listed for the student that says your FAFSA submission summary is ready to access. It is extremely important that the student access that information, because it's your opportunity to make sure that everything you submitted is accurate. What I would encourage you to do, they used to send this by paper, but now you will get a link in the email. And again, most links do tend to go to spam from the Department of Education, so be on the lookout for it. Usually you get this within 48 to 72 hours. The email again will go to the student with a link directly to the student, the FAFSA submission summary. If for whatever reason that email is lost, you don't see it, the student can always log back into the FAFSA and click that and print that that FAFSA submission summary directly from the website. Very important that the student review it and the parent review their portion. Everything needs to be accurate, down to the spelling of your last name. There's lots of cross-checks the Department of Education does behind the scenes. And if things aren't correct, those cross-checks can't be performed. If you put in an incorrect amount of child support, for instance, and you're required to list it because you receive child support, if it's incorrect, financial aid packages going out to you may not be correct. So it's your opportunity to review and make sure that everything is accurate. Very, very important that you do that as quickly as possible, because this year we know you're anxious. It's delayed 2 months. Come December, the schools are going to want to try to get you financial aid packages quickly. So what that means for Roanoke, for instance, usually the day we receive the FAFSA, we're already working on the financial aid package. And if I'm working on a financial aid package for your student with a FAFSA that's not correct, then that financial aid package may be incorrect as well. So do act pretty quickly on that. Again, it usually comes within 72 hours. It used to be faster. I don't know this year. I would err on saying it's probably going to be the 72-hour time frame. So look for that email. But again, if you don't get it, go back out to the FAFSA and you can access that FAFSA submission summary. Few additional things to be aware of as you are reviewing that. I've already mentioned, make sure everything's spelled correctly. Make sure the email addresses are accurate. The addresses are accurate. Did you report the correct parents? Make sure everything is accurate on that form. Because as I mentioned, there are lots of cross-checks the Department of Education is doing behind the scenes. For instance, Social Security Administration. If for whatever reason you put the wrong Social Security number, maybe the student transposed a couple numbers in their social, or maybe the parent started the form and entered maybe another child's Social Security number instead of the student that they're actually filing the form for. If that check can't be performed, Department of Education cannot confirm the student's identity, can't confirm the parent's identity. So that needs to be accurate. Everything needs to be accurate on there. Department of Homeland Security looks at citizenship status to confirm that students are in fact eligible. If for whatever reason that cross-check can't be performed, that FAFSA submission summary will draw your attention to it. Very first page of that FAFSA submission summary, lots of words, lots of paragraphs. That probably is the most important page because any major problems that the Department of Education had while processing your form are going to be drawn to your attention on that first page. So if they can't perform that Social Security check, they're going to make a note. If they can't confirm your citizenship status, they will make a note and tell you what you need to do to resolve that. Usually that just simply means get us a copy of your citizenship documentation, passport, what have you. But it is an additional step for you to take. So make sure, again, that you're reviewing to confirm that everything is accurate. Okay? And the biggest one that I've already stressed is a signature and consent. Without those two items, they're not going to do anything. You can sign the form, but if you don't give consent, you're out of luck. The student is not eligible for federal aid. So again, make sure that that is accurate. That's kind of the FAFSA in a nutshell. Yeah, I would say probably when you go out to do this FAFSA, I think an hour time block is probably a good thing to do. If it takes you more than an hour, consider calling me because it should not take you that long. Do not struggle through it. We had, like I said, families that took 2-3 hours over the course of 3 or 4 days, 2 weeks. They shouldn't be struggling that much. Utilize the financial aid offices. I can't speak for big schools like Virginia Tech, Radford, but I know for my school, we will sit down. We will either bring you into the office. Last year I had mom on Zoom and the student on a Teams, and we were trying to do it electronically. Do not struggle on your own. Utilize the help. If it takes you more than an hour, contact us and we'll assist you. Okay? Once you submit that, the department will send the results at the same time that you all are getting the FAFSA submission summary. The schools are getting those as well. And we will utilize those to award your financial aid. Okay? The different types of aid that we will review your student for are listed up here. We're going to go through each of them and give you kind of some examples. And I'll try to give you some examples from a public and a private school, just so you're aware. But there are 5 types of assistance. There's institutional aid, federal aid, entitlement, outside, and payment plans. And we're going to go through each of them so that you know exactly what to kind of expect. If you can remember these 5 different types, they're really just like 5 steps in the process. If you can remember this presentation later on and say, you know what, I saw a FAFSA, a student loan on my financial aid package. I remember from the presentation that was the 3rd thing on Melissa's list. So that means I'm on step 3. And now I know, okay, I've done step 3. Let me look for outside funding and payment options. So if you can remember that, that will help simplify things a little bit. Again, utilize the schools. Certainly we're here, but anytime that you all can educate yourselves, I think you're going to feel a little bit better about the process. You're going to be a little bit more engaged. So hopefully keep this presentation handy and keep it in the back of your mind. First thing that I want to highlight are the institutional scholarships and grants. These are the awards that you will get based upon filling out those college applications, the additional financial aid application for some schools. Again, Roanoke automatically awards you for these. Be familiar with what the individual school provides in terms of applications. I've already mentioned this is based upon high school GPA, standardized tests. Lots of schools have programs like a scholars competition. I think Lynchburg College has several scholars competitions where you can go out there and compete for additional scholarships. There are performance-based, I've mentioned art, theater, music, fine arts, marching bands. Some schools offer additional aid for participation in an honors college. So again, utilize the website, see what opportunities each individual school, they vary from school to school. Virginia Western, more than likely no college aid, no institutional aid. The more expensive the school typically means the more aid available to you. So just kind of keep that in mind. Most of the time these do have some renewal. It is important for you to know as you get these financial aid packages, the first thing I would ask is, are these institutional aid awards renewable? Can my student receive them for all 4 years? Some schools will award them on a yearly basis. Some, like Roanoke, will present it to you the freshman year and then will guarantee it sophomore, junior, and senior year. It is very important that you know that because you are making a plan for 4 years. You don't want to sign up for freshman year, find out that the financial aid's office is going to change your package sophomore year and then have to transfer. You don't want to do that. So educate yourselves, know what the renewal, if it is renewable, what GPA you need. At Roanoke, it's a minimal 2.0. Financial aid's in the business of giving money, not taking it back. So we want to make sure yes, we want you, and other schools will want you to have some obligation in terms of a GPA. We're giving you thousands of dollars as a reward for your high school performance, but we don't want to give it to you without some qualifications. So most of them will ask for a GPA requirement. Again, know what the individual school is going to request so that you know. For the honors college, they may be a 3.0 GPA, and that's that's a B average versus a C average. So know what those requirements are so that you are not surprised and your student knows what those are so that they can kind of keep track as they get midterms, as they get grades, to know if they're on track for that renewal. Okay? We talked extensively, there's also step 2 would be entitlement aid. So this aid is simply based upon either your geographical location or your religious affiliation. The student is entitled to certain funds. I've given you some examples up there. I'll give you an example from Roanoke. We are Lutheran affiliated, so we give our Lutheran students $2,000 each year to attend Roanoke College. Other schools may have something similar. We are also here in the state of Virginia. We are a private school. There's something called the Virginia Tuition Assistance Grant. That students that go to a private institution in the state that are from the state will receive, and next year it's supposed to be $5,250 scholarship. You are entitled to those funds based upon the fact that you are from Virginia and attending a private institution. The state also has, theirs is called VGAP for public schools. So if you're going to Virginia Tech or Radford or JMU, you're not eligible for TAG, the Tuition Assistance Grant, because that's only private schools. You'd be eligible potentially for that VGAP. So make sure that you are aware of the different opportunities that are available to you. And then there's also Virginia Transfer Grant. Because you are transferring in, you meet those qualifications, you are entitled to those funds. Those are just simply some examples. There might be more, but just know that that's kind of step 2 in the financial aid process. You get institutional aid and then entitlement funds. And then the next step are the need-based. And this is where we spent all that time talking about the FAFSA. As soon as we get the FAFSA results, your file embarks on the need-based stage. And at that point, we're going to review you for grants, loans, and work study. Okay? That all comes as a result of you filling out the FAFSA. Roanoke gets those daily. Tech gets those. Radford, Lynchburg, they get those daily, and they will review those. You do not need to call each individual school and say, hey, Melissa, will you review Sally for grant funds from the federal government? It's automatically going to be done for you. Okay? Some schools are going to be quicker than others. The smaller schools, you'll find, probably can get you results much quicker than the bigger schools. We do it on a daily basis. From my understanding and having my nephew go through Tech, he didn't get his financial aid package until the latter part of March. So it's a varying degree of response from the school, but it should automatically come to you. Okay? We're going to break it down a little bit more and talk specifically about each of those individually. The first I'm going to highlight are the grants. And the first 2 grants that I've got up on the screen are federal grants that the student potentially will receive as a result of those FAFSA results. So I'm pulling those in as a financial aid administrator. I am going to automatically review the student to see if they qualify for the federal Pell Grant, for instance. There are specific guidelines the Department of Education gives us. Not everybody is going to qualify. It is income-based, and you can see the example I've given you there, probably about $50,000 or less in family income. But if you qualify, it will automatically be awarded to you. And you see it's a pretty big range up there. It's almost up to $7,400. I don't know what it's going to be next year. That's really contingent upon the election. I do know that President Biden has increased it every year that he's been in office. President Trump kind of was a little bit more stagnant in terms of that. So I don't know what it will be next year. I'm hoping it will increase a little bit. It will be in the news probably. It is probably the most well-known of the grant programs. Always part of the, the presidential races. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty, almost time for that decision. But no, if you qualify, we will automatically award it to you. If you qualify for a Pell Grant, you are required to receive it. So what that means is I can't withhold it from you here at Roanoke. You'll get the same amount if you were to go to Tech, Virginia Western. You are going to qualify for Pell Grants regardless of where you go, as long as you meet the qualifications. Okay? It should automatically be awarded to you. The next grant we will review you for is the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. That doesn't fit on our award letters, probably doesn't fit on anybody else's award letter, so you're going to see that SEOG. That is simply a supplemental grant the Department of Education will offer Pell Grant recipients. So again, not everybody will qualify, but if you do, it will automatically be awarded to you. The maximum you can have from that program is $4,000. Some schools have, the way this program works, the Department of Education gives each school an allotment of funds. And it leaves it up to us. It has to go towards Pell Grant recipients, but it leaves it up to us in terms of the dollar figure that's provided. Roanoke's allotment is very small. So most of our awards are $400 to $800. Some bigger schools have much more of an allotment. So you're going to see a varying amount here. It's not like the Pell Grant where you have a set amount that every school is required to award you. It is very much dependent upon the school's allotment. And that is one of the main reasons if you are going to fill out the FAFSA, you want to do it sooner rather than later. Because we have an allotment at Roanoke, and once that allotment's spent, it's gone. If you are one of the ones that I mentioned, we're at fall break right now at Roanoke, and we have students that haven't filled out their FAFSA, those funds are gone. Those students have missed out. Had they filed when we asked them to in March, they could potentially, again, couple $100. It's not much, but it's less money that the student and the parent have to pay. So try to get the FAFSA form in as quickly as possible so that you are considered if you qualify before they run out of their allotment. A couple other grants that I wanted to draw your attention to. Some institutions have institutional supplemental grants, where the previous slide I noted most of those are for $50,000 adjusted gross incomes or less. Supplemental grant programs are really based upon the individual school and their endowment and their availability of scholarship funds. At Roanoke, we have a program that we've designed for what we classify as our middle class families. Probably don't qualify for Pell Grants, but you're by no means millionaires, so you need additional funds. So we've designed that program to help bridge that gap. Where you don't meet the qualifications for the federal government, you're going to get some additional funds from Roanoke. Now, I haven't mentioned it, but the FAFSA is really optional for most schools. It is entirely up to you if you want to fill it out. But this program is why I would point you all and stress for you all that you need to do it at least once. Fill out the form, even if you've had somebody, especially if you've had somebody that went through the process before the major changes last year. But even if you know somebody that went through last year and they didn't receive anything additional and they said, you know what, it's not worth it, I would still encourage you to take the hour, fill it out, see if you qualify for supplemental grant funds. Even if it's $1,000 that you qualify for, that's $1,000 less out of your pocket. And it would be worth it because usually it would be $1,000 each year if it's renewable. So consider doing it. It's optional for most schools, but do it once. If it doesn't lead to any grant funds, don't worry about doing it sophomore, junior, and senior year. But if it leads to $1,000, I would fill it out each year subsequent, okay? So that is up to the individual school. Some will offer it, some won't. And then there's also the Virginia Commonwealth. That is an example of a federal grant that is offered, or from the state, offered to Pell Grant recipients that are going to a public school in the state of Virginia. So there are lots of different opportunities, but those are the ones that I wanted to highlight. As a result of filling out that FAFSA, you will be reviewed for those particular grant funds. Again, automatically reviewed. You don't need to call and ask each individual school. You may want to call them and say, hey, well, when will I get the financial aid package? But you don't need to specifically say, Melissa, will you review my student for a Pell Grant? Will you review them for supplemental? That's automatically going to happen. The next thing that I wanted to highlight are the student loans that come as a result of filling out that FAFSA. And I know everybody cringes at loans. Nobody wants to take advantage of loans. But the economy that we're dealing with nowadays, majority of families attending Roanoke, I would say probably about 85% of our student population have to take advantage of loans. And that's the case. I know a lot of students take advantage of them at Virginia Western. I took advantage of them when I was at Roanoke. So if that is the case, if your family doesn't need loans, maybe you've saved up, maybe you've done the prepaid tuition, you're going to a public school and you don't need to worry about them, that's fine. But most schools are going to award them to you. You are not obligated to take advantage of them. We're going to present to you the full package, every opportunity that you have to pay that balance. It is entirely up to you whether or not you pursue it. If we present a loan to you and you do not want it, all you usually have to do is draw a line through your financial aid package, return it to the school, and that's you indicating that you do not want it, okay? But if loans are needed in your circumstances, the two that I've mentioned up here, noted up here, really it's one, but it's two different types. The student loan, a subsidized or an unsubsidized, those are the loans you want to take advantage of first. Both of these are student loans that will be repaid after graduation. There's what's called subsidized and unsubsidized. Simply the difference between the two is who is responsible for interest. If you qualify based upon your FAFSA results, we will award you subsidized student loans and the government will pay the interest on that particular portion of the loan while the student is enrolled. If you do not qualify, maybe you make a little too much income, you will receive what's called an unsubsidized. The interest for that is the student's responsibility. So subsidized, the federal government pays or the taxpayers pay. Unsubsidized, it's the student's responsibility. But in either situation, there is no required repayment while the student is enrolled. They will have 6 months after they graduate or drop below half-time to kind of get situated, get a job, and then they would start repayment for up to 10 years. Okay? For the freshmen, they receive a total of $5,500. Sophomores get $6,500. Juniors and seniors get $7,500. So 55, 65, and 75. So as you progress through, a little bit more is available to you as you progress and meet those different requirements. Because of federal regulations, no more, for instance, like I said, freshmen receive $5,500. Because of regulations, no more than $3,500 of that can be subsidized. So a lot of the students that get packages from our office will see a $3,500 subsidized and a $2,000 unsubsidized. The combination will be $5,500 for freshmen. For sophomore year, it's $4,500 and $2,000. The combination is that 65. So it's 55, 65, and 75. Again, if you don't need to take advantage of it, it is entirely up to you. You can see the interest rate. You may look at that and say, you know what, that seems high to me. This is entirely a student loan. There is no cosigner. So I would challenge each and every one of you, even if you're a member of a credit union, go find a loan that they are willing to give a 17-year-old simply on their signature. It just doesn't happen. So this is a way for the student to stay engaged, take a little bit of responsibility. They are the ones that are taking the loans out, and they are the ones ultimately responsible for repaying. However, there's nothing to say that you can't make a deal and say, hey, you know what? If you get a 3.5 GPA, I'll help pay. But it puts a little bit more on the pressure of the student to know, I've got some skin in the game, so I need to go to class. I need to keep my grades up because I'm taking loans that will be due later on, and I want to make sure that I'm taking full advantage and not wasting my money. So consider taking advantage of it. Again, if you don't need it and don't want it, you just simply draw a line through your award letter. The last program that I want to highlight as a result of the FAFSA form is the Federal Work-Study Program. This is the program that varies the most from school to school, so it is important that you individually ask the schools how this is handled. Some schools will assign jobs, some will leave it up to the student to secure a job on their own. Some will give them a paycheck, some will allow it to go towards tuition. It really just depends upon how the individual school has set it up. I'll tell you how it works at Roanoke, but again, it is varying from school to school. At Roanoke, if you qualify, you will see $1,500 as part of your financial aid package. Behind the scenes, the Department of Education is paying some of that, so it's being subsidized by the department, so that's why it's considered financial aid. We do not assign jobs at Roanoke. We create a job market. We have an online app where students can go out there, find out all the job opportunities. They must apply individually to those, and then they are hired by their supervisors. They might be asked to fill out an application. They might ask to be to participate in an interview. They will secure that job on their own. They'll work with their supervisor to set a schedule. It's usually anywhere from a couple hours all the way up to 10 hours a week. Really just depends upon the needs of the office and the availability of the student. Pay, I think, just went up to about $12 an hour. Don't quote me on that, but it just go up. It's supposed to go up again in January. They're not going to be making millions, but the way we work it at Roanoke, the pay goes directly back to the student. We pay them twice a month in the form of a paycheck. They are not required to put it towards tuition. Majority of our students use it for spending money. Now, again, some schools do require it go towards tuition. Some will discount room and board. It really just depends upon the individual school, so make sure that you are aware of it. At Roanoke, it's a purely optional program because the funds are paid directly to the student. If they choose not to work, they don't owe us that money. It never came off that bottom line. We were never expecting it towards tuition. Other schools that require it to go towards tuition, if it's part of the package and they don't work, then that means you owe that money back as part of your balance. So it's very important that you understand it, understand the package, how it works there, how it affects your balance due, and whether or not it's required. We have a lot of students that come that want to play athletics. In between training, practice, game schedules, working on campus, going to class, that's just not feasible. So those students may not want to work while they're in season. They may not want to work at all. We have a lot of students that are leaving a very structured lifestyle at home right now where mom and dad get them up in the morning. You know, they know I have class from, I don't even know when class starts now, anywhere from 8 to 2:30, 3 o'clock. It's very structured. They're not getting that at college. So we have some students that come in and say, you know what, I want to get that schedule down, I want to get academics under my belt, and then maybe next semester or sophomore year I'll pick up a job. It is purely up to them. Doesn't affect their balance. So at Roanoke, that's totally fine. But at a school where it does, that might cause problems. So make sure to research and see. Most of the jobs are on campus. Each school does have a requirement. We have to, in order to participate in the program, as a school, we have to offer some community service opportunities. An America Reads program where students go into the schools and read to elementary age students. So there are a few opportunities like that. For the most part, it is on-campus employment in the cafeteria, in the bookstore, working for offices like admissions and financial aid, that sort of thing. Step 4 are outside funding. These are funding sources that the student secures on their own. The guidance counselors are really great resources to kind of help narrow this down. There's lots of search engines as well, but these are things that the student will have to secure on their own. I'm not going to award them as a financial aid administrator at Roanoke College. It is on the student to go out and seek these, fill out the applications from different civic groups, Kiwanis, you know, Target has them, Papa John's, lots of different opportunities, but the student must take the onus and actually make these applications. I've listed several examples up there. We also have these search engines that I would encourage you to look at, fastweb.com and students.gov. Simply the student goes out and creates an account, they answer some questions, creates a profile, and then these search engines will spit back to them potential scholarships that they may be eligible to apply for. Great way to narrow down, there are thousands of them. It's a great way to narrow down and find those unique that fit your profile, but also utilize, again, civic groups are a great resource. These are not ATMs, they're not going to spit money back out to you. They're going to give you specific, you may qualify for XYZ. The student is then going to need to take the step and actually apply. A lot of the deadlines for outside scholarships are in the new year, early in February. So this is something that I would encourage those of you who have seniors, are seniors in the audience, start looking at these now. Put these applications in now. You can't fill out the FAFSA till December, so utilize your financial aid steps and start filling these out and submitting these. A lot of these, though, are going to be for 1 year only. So again, as you're budgeting and planning for sophomore, junior, and senior year, be aware, because we had one student who I think she got 6 or 7 different scholarships. It was like $12,000. That was 1 year, and she didn't have that for the next year. So she needed to plan. Luckily, she did, but had she not planned for that, that's $12,000 that she's not going to have for subsequent years. So just make sure to plan if, in fact, you do secure any of these that are one-time. Some are 4-year. It really is individual based upon whatever the scholarship folks are offering. But the big thing is the student has to secure these on your own, okay? And then after everything's said and done, each school is going to present different payment options. At Roanoke, we will put all of your financial aid together into a financial aid package. We'll give you the costs minus your aid and bring you right down to a bottom line figure of what would be due for the remainder of the year. We take it even a step further and give you the fall and spring balances. And then we'll present to you, we have a separate payment options brochure, all the different ways that you can pay that. Obviously, let's say your balance is $10,000 for fall, $10,000 for spring. You all can do a cash credit card payment. I've never known a school to turn that away. But I also know that the majority of us do not have $10,000 just sitting around. So in order to make college a reality, fit it into my budget, I need to utilize some other options. Most schools will allow you to do a payment plan. Some will do it within the individual school. Some will hire a company to help, and they will stretch those payments out over the course of either 5 months, 4 months, 10 months. It really depends upon the individual school. But that's taking that $20,000 for the year and stretching it out over the course of 10 months is very different. So that's a smaller payment, very different from the $10,000 due for fall and spring. Makes it a little bit more feasible for your budget. There are also additional loan opportunities. There's something called the Parent Loan for Undergraduate Students, PLUS loan, P-L-U-S, that parents could take to pursue and cover that remaining balance. Or they say, you know what, this is on Johnny, he wants to go to school, let's give him a private loan. So there are other opportunities to help make that balance financially feasible and fit into your budget. You are not expected to pay the full bill all at once. It is usually either split automatically between fall and spring, or you have the opportunity to either take that enroll in a payment plan or take an additional loan. These are not by any stretch the only options you have. You all may have credit unions that offer really low interest rate loans. We have some families that I wouldn't recommend it, but may take a withdrawal from your retirement. You can utilize whatever you want. But these are the ones that are most common amongst all of the schools that will typically be available to you. And more information is found on each individual site, drawing your attention to their different payment options. I don't know of any school that doesn't offer all of those. The payment plan may vary. Some schools will do it internally, and some will offer an outside source to set that up. But most of them will offer a payment plan. And then a few additional notes that just didn't fit anywhere on the rest of the presentation. Visit the campuses. Meet while you're visiting the campuses. Ask not only to meet with admissions, but sit down with financial aid. Ask your questions. Make sure that those are answered. Respond to everything in a timely manner. If we are asking for something from the financial aid office that we need from you, please respond quickly. Because more times than not, we need it to get to an accurate financial aid package available to you. And if you delay for whatever reason, that financial aid package is going to be delayed. So respond quickly. Communicate individual circumstances. I alluded to the fact that earlier it's asking for 2023 information on that FAFSA. 2023, by the time the FAFSA is available in December, that's a while ago. Things change. Yes, we all need to have that 2023, that initial FAFSA to keep it equitable, but each school has the opportunity to exercise what we call professional judgment. So I, as a financial aid administrator, can go into the FAFSA and manipulate the figures to more accurately reflect your current circumstances. So I think the example I gave earlier is, maybe in 2023 you were working, and for whatever reason, maybe you've retired, maybe you've had a job change. Income is different in 2025. You want to communicate that to each individual school so that we can make sure that the package is accurate for your current circumstances. And that is completely within our rights. I will tell you that some schools, it's up to the individual schools. The community colleges, not going to entertain that. I'll be 100% frank. They're not going to care. The private schools, because we're expensive, when we know we need to get you aid, we are going to review that. And it's kind of a mixed bag with the public schools. But make sure, regardless, communicate those, put those in writing, send them, write a letter, make it generic enough, send it to all 10 schools that you're looking at. Give them each an opportunity to review it, and know that each school may handle it slightly differently. They may reach out for additional information, but that way you know you've communicated your circumstances to each school. You know that you've done everything you can to get the best package, and then as an administrator, I can then tell you this is the best package I can get you, so that everybody knows and everybody's happy. And then some just additional hints and helpful notes for you all to kind of look at. That is what I have. You've got my presentation with my contact information. Again, please feel free to reach out if you have specific questions. Doesn't have to be Roanoke related. I am available. Does anybody have any questions that they are comfortable asking in front of the group? I always ask that and hardly anybody ever raises their hands. Well, I will be available for a little bit afterwards, so if you wanted to get any questions answered, yes.
Question about the two parents and the student. So if one parent is the computer or the student, and then the other parent just he recommended logging in or setting up the account, it's just sort of like hiding it.
Yeah, so the question is, you've got the family, and I recommended earlier that mom and dad, you really only need one. But I recommend both have them because both are eligible to take parent loan, and you need an FSA username and password to get that. And really the other one just sits out there. If you don't use it, it's just sitting out there. Nobody's accessing it. There's no security concern. It's just if for whatever reason some circumstances change and maybe you filled it out freshman year, you're not available to fill it out sophomore year, he doesn't need to go out there. He'll already have it. So it's just a time saver.
Okay, so does this just basically like here's the information and the application, and you have 3 doors to look at the student, one parent, the parent. Is all that information available so that everybody who's got the account?
Yeah.
So
Well, they won't be able to see any, the information will be available. The student can log in to get the FAFSA submission summary. The parent will not be able to access the FAFSA submission summary. So only the student can, but they'll be able to see parent information for parent 1 and parent 2. And they can share that with you, but they are not able to log in on their own to submit that or to access that information as a parent.
Okay, so the student that can see everything.
Yes.
Parents can see a port
Yeah,
only.
they can see everything except for the tax information. That is blocked for everybody, but they can see everything else that's submitted, the student. Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm losing my juice here. Anybody else have any other questions?
You had said earlier that the username and password for FAFSA was case sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Is the information within the FAFSA form also case sensitive?
Not within the FAFSA form. You can type lowercase. It's just when you're requesting your username and password, that's when it's all case sensitive. With the department, if you submit everything capitalized, they'll fix it. So it's not case sensitive within the actual FAFSA. Okay. Yes.
I knew that one. One, can scholarships be applied for before the FAFSA is completed?
Outside scholarships?
Yes.
Yes, and you can actually submit you can do it in any order that you want. You can apply for scholarships before the FAFSA. You can submit the FAFSA before you apply to the college. You can do it really in any order. It's typically, it typically goes the order that I submitted it, but you can do it if you want to start searching for those outside scholarships now and then do the FAFSA in January, you can do that.
And two, when scholarships are there scholarships that can be applied for like sophomore, junior, and senior year to replace the non-renewable?
Yeah, sometimes some schools do have some opportunities. I will be 100% frank, they're few and far between because a lot of schools will concentrate on getting the students there and securing, and at Roanoke, we'll guarantee it. Now, the schools that don't guarantee it each year, then they're more than likely going to have some specific. And at Roanoke, we've got some, like for instance, freshman to sophomore, there's a license plate scholarship that only that group is eligible to apply for. And then as they progress through and get more secure within their majors and their departments, each of their departments may have some opportunities. Most of the time, the schools will notify the students, especially if they're private, Public schools probably will be more on the student to kind of identify and ask those questions. It won't be automatic, and that's just simply they're dealing with too many students to kind of keep it that personal, which is, why we sell a private versus a public. It's just a little bit more personal and able to walk you through a little bit.
And last, and I didn't even think of this until she asked her question, but if you have in the home a parent and a contributor, because you have a parent, a step parent, and the contributor does not need their own ID.
They don't need it.
But can they get it if there's not a second parent?
Yes, I would, any parents, I would go ahead and encourage, go ahead and get it. Yeah. It's not going to hurt you. And it's really just simply a time saver if there, if parent needs to submit a last minute plus line. It does take 24 to 48 hours to confirm your identity. So when you're dealing with a quick turnaround, it's easier if you just go ahead and do it now. And like I said, it's not a security risk. As long as you keep it handy, it'll be there when you need it. Okay? Well, I will be available for questions afterwards. I thank you all for coming, and please do not hesitate to reach out if you've got additional questions.